that one game, mostly because it's the topic of conversation. So many places that you may go, and you know, if you watch it, you have a little bit of something to contribute. You know, you can speak about something with people from, yeah, I saw it, and that was a pretty good game, or I, you know, this or that. At least, you know, that's like, I use that same logic for seeing bad movies. You know, like even if there's a movie in the theater, like, you know, it's horrible, you feel like you should see it so you can talk about it intelligently with people. Like the new Star Wars movie or something that, you know, people thinking about.
That gave me nightmares when after I saw the trailer.
I have a theory about Star Wars and why all the movies are bad. Want to hear my theory?
Yeah.
My theory is there are some stories that have a finite end. You know, you tell the story and the story's done. You know, it's kind of like Jaws. Like the original Jaws movie, awesome, like terrifying. It was groundbreaking. But how many ways can you tell a story about a shark eating people? I mean, like, that wears out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But they just kept making Jaws 2 and Jaws 3D and Jaws 4. There's no story there, you know what I mean? So they get more and more lame.
Same goes with the Nightmare on Elm Street and the Friday the 13th.
But I feel this way, same way about Star Wars.
Yeah, that's true.
Star Wars was a wonderful story about an orphan kid who was a nobody on a desert planet who ultimately helped defeat the Empire and redeemed his father's soul. The end. Great story. It's done.
But then Disney bought them.
Yeah, but then these other studios, but then the people that own it are like, we made so much money, let's make another one. And we'll just change some names and, you know, flip some genders around. Let's make Luke a girl and call her Rey. And, you know, let's make Darth Vader Kylo Ren. And let's make the Death Star a planet now that still destroys planets like the Death Star did. And you know, let's not have the Emperor, let's have this Snoke or whatever his name was, you know what I mean? And even like the Empire, and now it's the First Order, and they're flying the same ships and they're wearing the same uniforms. It's just, I really feel like there was just a finite story to tell, and there's not a lot more to get out of it. So they keep regurgitating the same basic ideas. Like something like Star Trek is different because it's a journey. It's a journey of exploration through space. And at any different moment on any different planet, you meet different people and different species, and you could have all kinds of adventures. But I always felt like Star Wars, you know, was a really cool kind of a mythological story. But once it was told, it was done. They just keep trying to suck more money out of it, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, I heard in the third and final trilogy, they just landed pandering to the hardcore fans of the original trilogy, and like they brought back like some characters from the original trilogy that felt like it was forced, and it felt rushed and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, nowadays it seems like a lot of entertainment is. What's the word? The kind of minimal effort. Like, what's the least amount we have to do to make hundreds of millions of dollars? You know. So anyway, we're about to close down this convention. This is the last thing I do before I head home, and probably you guys as well. So thank you. Let me first of all thank you guys for coming. You are the hardcore. You're right, because it was a much slower day today, so there are a lot more opportunities to talk to people and interact, and which is nice. Most of the time you don't get that opportunity. So this is kind of cool. So I'm going to open it up to answer any questions you may have about voice acting or my work or Star Trek, or anything like that. Did you have a question, Dick?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You think you'll make another Star Trek continues? Continues?
Continues.
Uh-oh.
Hey, no, that's fine. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello there. No, I don't think so. Sadly. I would have liked to. We would have liked to do more. I honestly, in the back of my mind somewhere, I think it would be fun to make like a feature film with our cast and crew, maybe like like one full-length feature, maybe somewhere between Star Trek: The Motion Picture and The Wrath of Khan. I have a good story, but some things would have to change for that to happen. And I don't know if they will change or when they will change. So as of right now, we did what we set out to do. We wanted to finish the 5-year mission of the Enterprise, the original 5-year mission of the Enterprise. And we did that. It had never been done. For those of you that don't know, the original Star Trek series was canceled in its 3rd season of television. Even though at the beginning of every show, Captain Kirk would say, these are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise, its 5-year mission. And then they were canceled. So my desire was to pick up right where the original series left off and finish that 5-year mission and leave everybody where they were when the motion picture began. And we did that. So we've done it. We did what we set out to do. We wanted to do maybe 13 episodes or 15 episodes, and we were only able to do 11 because of the powers that be. But at least we did it. At least we finished the original series of Star Trek. So I don't know if we'll get to do any more. I don't think we'll do any more episodic productions, but I'd like to think that maybe a year or two from now, maybe we could get everybody back together and do something like that. That might be fun. Yes.
Is that something that bothered you for a while? Because with most shows, like, they don't just randomly cut off. With Star Trek, it just cut off at Turnabout Intruder. They never had a series finale.
Oh no!
Like,
It
how
always
long
bothered
would that
me. So
fun?
what? Yeah, because if you guys don't know, Star Trek: The Motion Picture was released in was released in 1979. Star Trek: The Series was canceled in 1969. In other words, there was a 10-year gap before you ever saw Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock and Dr. McCoy again. So in my mind, when the motion picture came out, Captain Kirk was an admiral. He literally took a desk job. Now, why would Captain Kirk ever give up his ship and take a desk job? Probably a good story to tell there. Spock had gone back to Vulcan, had gone back to his home planet to pursue this discipline of purging all remaining emotion. And why would he do that? Good story. McCoy's got, everybody kind of left the service. They all went their own ways. So my idea was, let's pick up where the original series was canceled, and let's tell a bunch of wonderful stories, but let's start crafting an ending and return the Enterprise to Earth and craft a story to explain why Kirk took a promotion and why Spock went back to Vulcan and why everybody kind of went their separate ways, and leave everything right where it was. The ship in dry dock above Earth, Kirk takes the promotion, Spock is gone, and everything is exactly where it was when Star Trek: The Motion Picture comes out. Yeah, it always kind of bothered me that they were canceled. And the reason it was supposed to be a 5-year mission was because they were hoping for a 5-year season of television. And they were canceled in their 3rd, so they never got to finish. Question? Anybody? Yeah, man.
So, there was a certain show anime called Ghost Story,
Oh, gosh.
where you voiced like a perfect ghost called Da Vinci.
Oh my god, yes.
How was it like? What was the funniest part of voicing it? And also, I heard that in the end credits, you use an alternate name called Frosted Tits or something like that.
No, that's not even close.
Oh, sorry. Well, it's something to do with frost.
I will tell you. So there was this very racy director at ADV named Stephen Foster. He was an incredibly brilliant, creative guy, but he was kind of, what's the word? Energetic, you know what I mean? And very, very ostentatious and flamboyant, very colorful. And he directed several shows that I was in, but he was directing this one show called Ghost Stories. And before he ever asked me to play a role in it, they were already working on the show. So when I would go in to record whatever, Full Metal Panic, Rosafon, Sergeant Frog, whatever, I would be in this studio, and somebody would be over in this other studio, and they would be recording Ghost Stories with Steven. What I heard about Ghost Stories was that it didn't do well in Japan, and so when ADV bought the license, they basically told, the Japanese basically told ADV, you can do whatever you want with it. It didn't do well, so rather than, towing the line and saying, make it just like ours, don't deviate from our story, don't change anything, they basically said, hey, have at it. If you can do something with it that makes it any better, fine. Well, you don't tell Stephen Foster that kind of thing, because he will pull out all the stops. And he and Lucy Christian and Chris Patton and everybody that worked at ADV at that time were a part of Ghost Stories. And they made it very blue. You know what I mean? It was very controversial, very racy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know that it had a plot. It was just a series of, jokes and weird, twisted shtick. So I'd heard about it. And Steven came up to me one day and he goes, hey, I have this role I want you to play in Ghost Stories. So I was like, okay. And I went in and I played this character named Da Vinci. And when I was working on it, it was the first time I'd actually seen it. Up to that point, I just heard about it, right? I'd heard from other voice actors who were talking about Ghost Stories, and apparently they made some jokes about me, Lucy Christian, and they were making jokes about me and stuff. Just taking shots at everybody, having a good time, very sarcastic. But when I started recording this character named Da Vinci, I was like, oh my gosh, this show is really not my cup of tea. It's not something I would normally do. So when I finished the recording session, I said to Stephen Foster, is it okay if you don't put my name in the credits? And he was like, well, sure, what do you want me to put? How do you want me to list your name? And I made the worst mistake of all. You know what I said? I don't care. Put whatever you want. I literally told this incredibly creative guy, give me whatever name you want. So for several years after Ghost Stories had been released, nobody knew that I was a part of it. But in the credits, the guy who played Da Vinci was somebody named Obi Frost Tips. Obi, I assume, because I liked Star Wars. He knew that, Obi-Wan. And then Frost Tips, I suppose. And for the longest time, nobody even knew. Like, nobody knew. And somewhere along the line, somebody figured it out, and then it was out everywhere. And people started asking, so tell us about Obi Frost Tips. I'm like, oh no! How did you find out? So, what? Did I really? Well, you're welcome. For the shoe wash. Question, anybody?
Is there a character you just had the opportunity to just embrace overacting because it was?
Absolutely. There was a show I did called Level E.
Oh yes.
This is another one of those shows where it's kind of a dream come true, because normally there's a very strict guideline of what you need to do, and plot line you need to follow, and characterization. And Joel McDonald, who directed that show, called me and said, I have the show I'm directing next, and I want you to play this character named Prince Baka. Anybody speak Japanese? You know what Baka means? Yeah, Prince Idiot. And I said, okay. And I said, what are you looking for? And he said, anything you want. And I didn't really believe him, because normally you don't get that kind of direction from a director. Usually he knows what he wants, or, you know, there's a kind of a basic direction you're supposed to be taking the character. So I came in for my first recording session for that show, and he said, this character is an alien from another planet, and he's fascinated by all things pop culture on the Earth, and you know, he's learning about all these weird, crazy things. And any references, any pop culture references, any funny voices, anything at all you want to do, you can do. And I was like, you're kidding, really? And he's like, yeah. So we started recording, and we came to the this first little section where I had popped into my mind some stupid idea, like doing it as Yoda, or singing the line, or you know, anything that came to mind. And so I did it, and I was waiting for him to say, no, let's do this. And he was like, that's great, let's keep going. I was like, he was sitting in the control room with his feet up on the desk, just having a good old time. Anything I wanted to do, he did. So like I said, I would do the weirdest things. And you know what it reminded me of? And I know a lot of you are probably not even old enough to remember this. It reminded me of Mork and Mindy. Robin Williams was in a TV series that basically put him on the map. This is how he became famous. He was on a sitcom where he was an alien from another planet. And he actually played this character Mork on Happy Days, a show years ago about the 50s, and you know, and the Fonz, and you know, growing up in the 50s, rock and roll and all that. And he played this alien from another planet named Mork, from the planet Ork, Mork from Ork. And it was so funny and so well received that he got a spin-off series. And in his series, it was just one crazy characterization after another. He was all over the place, just like Robin Williams in his stand-up. Like, you know what I mean? Like just jacked up on something. And just mind so fast and quick and moving. And so that was what this reminded me of. That was what what Level E and this character reminded me of. He was a lot of fun.
Yes, he was.
Question?
Do you feel like that affected your kind of comedy any?
No. You know, one of the interesting things with voice acting is that I was talking to, who was I talking to? Oh, Isaac, the guy that was just in here. We were talking earlier today about how when you're voice acting, you're in a booth and there is no audience. So if you're saying something funny, nobody's laughing. If you're trying to give a speech that's supposed to be heartbreaking, nobody's crying. You know what I mean? If you're trying to say something terrifying, there's nobody scared. There's no one there to know whether or not what you're doing is going to work or not. So one of the reasons I have always loved coming to conventions is meeting people and getting their feedback on work that I've done that they enjoy. Because when I actually did it, there wasn't any audience. So you kind of wonder whether or not it's going to be well received, you know? So it's always gratifying to do something in a recording session and you hope it's going to be funny. And then to come to conventions and meet people who are like, oh my gosh, I love this, and this was so funny. Like, thank goodness. Because at the time, you don't know. Yes?
So they always talk about, was there any character that you wish you could have done, like in voice acting and whatnot, but acting just in general, is there anything from the stage, like any role that was ever on your bucket list that you look at it now going, well, I could never play that?
I could never play that,
Well, like
or
the-
something that I would always.
well, like
wanted to
Jekyll and
play.
Hyde, something like that, like those younger characters. Like throughout the years, you always like get this little roadmap of, you know, characters I wish I could play, this and that.
I did a lot of musical theater, and loved it. But then, after I got out of college, you know, you're looking for a job and you're trying to get work, and the musical theater kind of fell by the wayside. And anytime I would go to a musical theater production, Miss Saigon, Les Mis, Phantom, Jekyll and Hyde, I would sit there in the chair and I would, you know what white knuckling it is? That means? It means you're holding on to the chair so tight because you want to do something. You're holding yourself back. Every time I would go see one of those kind of musicals, I would be like, damn, I miss this so much. I wish I could do this more. Problem is, you know, if you have a busy schedule, you can't be on a stage play. They just take forever to mount and then to put on. They take a lot of time. So I never got to, but I would love to be in Les Mis. I would love to be in Phantom. If I ever had the opportunity, I'd love to do that. But you know, then you get older and you're like, well, guess that window is closed for that particular character or that particular character.
I mean, that's why with voice acting, you don't have to worry about like, oh, you know, I'm older, I can't play a 14-year-old blonde kid with
Yeah,
a
that's one of the fun things about voice acting. I even talked about this with Isaac. Today, we talked about one of the fun things about voice acting is you can play characters that you would never get cast as on screen or on stage. I mean, if there were a live-action Full Metal Alchemist, it wouldn't be me, right? It would be an actual 15-year-old kid or whatever. I might get to play Hohenheim, or you know, maybe I could play Mustang, you know, but you know, a little more masculine voice. But you know what I mean? But not Ed. I would never get or Broly. You know, I'm no Broly. If there was a live action of a lot of anime, the characters that you voice, you would never be able to play those characters. So that is one of the wonderful things about voice acting, is if you have any kind of versatility at all, you're able to do a lot more.
And you tend to voice from like teenage boys to the middle-aged or old men. Like you have a great vocal range.
Thank you.
Like it shows like in Garo the animation and stuff. Like you voice like from a young like villain to like in the other two incarnations you voice like old guys.
That's a lot of fun. We talked about yesterday in the voice acting panel how it's always fun to play people that are not like you. Play characters that are not your normal voice, that are not your personality, because that's kind of quintessentially what acting is. It's portraying a character different from yourself. So it's always been one of my favorite things to play characters that are very different from me, especially if there's a way to make them sound different. Yes?
Where did you get those pants?
Where did these? Thank you, I love you guys. People make fun of my pants.
Like
I wanted to ask you earlier.
Like first with the boots and not the pants. Like,
Yeah, these pants came from, I mentioned it yesterday.
Yeah, but
They came from Warn Star.
Warn Star?
Yeah, they have these really cool WORNSTAR, Warn Star. And then there's another great shop called Forgotten Saints online. But you know what? I'll be sitting sometimes with my laptop and I'll just Google search weird pants, or you know what I mean, or eclectic. I'll look for some word that's like, you know, something, and just just search around. And sometimes you'll find really cool things that are like on completely obscure sites. So it's not like, oh, I shop at so and so. No, wherever I find something cool, I'll get it. No matter, you know, it could be cheap, it could be at Sears, it could be, you know, anyone. It could be H&M, it could be online. It doesn't really matter. It's fun. I'll go into like a Buckle, and they'll be like, oh, can we interest you in some jeans? And I'm like, okay, listen, I have plenty of jeans. I'm just looking for something interesting, something different. And for 20 minutes, the woman would be like, how about these? I'm like, those look exactly like the ones I'm wearing right now. How about these? I've got 4 pair like that. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be something interesting. But yeah, those are where I got them. Thank you for asking. Question?
Is there something that pulls you into a script when you have the opportunity to see one ahead of time? Something that
You don't have an opportunity to see one ahead of time. We don't get any scripts ahead of time. We have no idea what we're going to say until we get into the studio. In fact, we're not memorizing lines, we're reading them. So, you know, I see those lines for the first time when I go in for the recording session. Now, there have been a handful, and I mean only a handful, of shows that I've been in that I knew about before I was cast. That I looked into and I thought, ooh, that's cool. That would be a fun show. And I really, really wanted to be a part of them because of the little bit that I knew about them already. But of the 300 plus anime series and video games that I've been in, there are only 4 or 5 that I ever knew anything about before I started recording them. In fact, I auditioned because, like, I want to be a part of Vampire Night. I want to be a part of Oron. I really want to be a part of whatever, fill in the blank, you know? Whatever, I mean,
so
there were only a
it's a genuine reaction whenever you see the lines for the first time.
pretty much. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story about genuine reactions. Sorry that if I sound like a broken record, because I've said this before, but it's very relevant to what you just asked me. There were many times in Full Metal when I was in tears myself. I became so invested in Edward that when he went through something that was just heartbreaking, I'm watching it for the first time and I'm like tearing up, and I'm viscerally moved by what's happening. And the director would say, do you want to take a minute? Do you want to take a minute to gather your composure? And I would say, are you kidding? No. Right now is the time to record while it's real and genuine, and you're able to capture the real emotion of it. There were other times that Ed was crying when I wasn't crying, and so I had to act, or, obviously when his arm's getting torn off, my arm is not getting torn off, so that's acting. But there were many times when I was having the genuine emotional response that he was having, and we were able to capture it because I had just come to that realization. In fact, the whole thing about Hughes dying. Ed and Al were off on their journey, and they didn't know that Hughes had been killed for quite a while. And I knew because I was watching the show on Cartoon Network. When I would go in and record Ed's lines, I just recorded Ed's lines. I'm not sitting there watching the whole show and listening to everybody else's performance. So I would watch the show on Friday nights or Saturday nights when it came on Cartoon Network, just like everybody else, because I kind of wanted to see what was going on in the story with everybody in it. If I was the first one to record episode 5, 6, and 7, there was nobody else recorded yet, so I couldn't hear any other voices. I didn't really know what anyone else had done yet. Because I watched it on television, I knew, Vic knew, that Hughes had been killed, but Ed did not know yet, and I was kind of bummed by that because you can imagine. Because you saw in the episode when Ed finds out, he is pissed and angry, and it's very emotional because he loved Hughes. And I remember, coming into the studio several times and asking the director, is today the day that Ed finds out? He's like, not yet. So I always knew it was coming. But that was one of the rare incidents where I knew what was going to happen before Ed knew. Because I really kind of liked the idea of finding out as the character was finding out. Because your reactions tend to be more honest, more authentic. It's like when people do fights or something on screen, or a woman is supposed to slap a man. And, some actors are like, do the fake thing, but other actors are like, hit me. Rear back and slap me, because it will look real, because it will be real, and it will feel real, and my reaction will be real. So it's always good when you can capture that kind of authenticity.
I actually saw that episode where Ed found out that huge guy, like when I was watching it on Netflix last week. I can hear like the emotion that he put up when he heard the news.
Yeah.
But you can also do like, when it comes to emotions, like you also can do like very angry or manipulative voices, like when you voiced Silver Mask in Heroic Legend of Arslan.
Yeah.
Or like how you voiced the sinister Akechi from Sengoku Basra or something like that.
Yes. Question?
They texted.
Responding.
Yeah, we don't want to interrupt you.
Not at all. Question? Anybody?
So aside from conventions, how are people able to like contact you? Like, do you do like Twitch or YouTube Live?
Currently, the best way to contact me is by email. And believe it or not, my email address is everywhere. I make it a point to read everything and try my best to respond. One of the reasons that I used to do a lot of conventions is because I appreciate interacting with people personally, directly, face to face. I have a fan club called the Risen Bull Rangers, which are an amazing group of human beings, probably the best humans in the world. I don't know, 20,000 or so membership.
Yeah, I've lost count.
Yeah, roughly. I don't even remember anymore. But it's really great because it's a place that people can get. It doesn't cost anything to join. But you instantly have all of these friends that are fellow Rangers that are like, love the same things you love. And great place to, to make friends that have similar interests. I love to do things with them on occasion. Have a what do they call it? A chat with them, where we do a chat room and chat with them a little bit. Or sometimes at conventions we'll have dinners with the Rangers that attend the convention. I'm on Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I hope you will. You never know what you're gonna find. But so be it, right? Question? Excuse me, this is important.
There's a trash can, sorry. I guess some people do stuff away. Oh, is it okay?
Yeah, I mean, my record was in Anybody else need their wrapper away?
I know there are plenty of candy wrappers in this room right now. I know that. Question? Yes.
Did you enjoy playing Tamaki Suo?
Oh my gosh.
Girl, I had that.
I love Tamaki with the heat of 1,000 suns. Oh my gosh. I love that character so much. Yes. Tamaki, I mean, Ed was my favorite just because of the amount of time and effort and love that I put in him, but but Tamaki is a very, very close second place. Tamaki, Oron is one of those shows that I mentioned that I knew something about before I auditioned. So I really wanted to be a part of that show. And I'm so glad to get to do it. I loved him.
What did you think of the ending? Where he has to leave and it's all...
See, that's just it. There needs to be more. There wasn't really an ending at all. And the manga kept going.
Yeah,
You know?
that is true.
So, I would love to see there be more. I don't really know how to accomplish that, but I would love it. Yeah.
I know how. The studio.
Sorry?
The Vic studio.
Oh!
Well,
Well, that's a great idea. If only I had $500,000.
Looks like I got somebody else to buy that kind of one already.
Yes, thank you. I would be happy to help you spend that. Yes.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, just want to make sure. So, speaking of like attractive boys like Tamaki, sorry about that.
That's right.
Miss-
You're forgiven, Covenant.
Yes. You were also in another anime that's similar to Orange High School called The
yes,
Wallflower,
yes.
where you voiced Takenaga Oda, who's also
Yes.
another attractive boy. It was considered like a goth version of Orange High School.
Yeah, and Wallflower, we did Wallflower before there was an Oron. I enjoyed Wallflower a lot. It was kind of, really dark and kind of creepy. Funny creepy.
Yeah.
And then when Oron came out and we started working on it, I was like, this kind of reminds me of Wallflower, only it's not as dark and gothy. But yeah, it did kind of remind me of Oron as well.
Yeah, because like both you, Greg Ayers, and Lucy Christian are both in a similar anime with like attractive boys with the girl.
Yeah, the group of boys with the one girl, and yeah.
Yeah, it's like
It's kind of similar.
Yeah, I just like noticed that after watching both Orange High School Host Club and The Wallflower.
Yes. Yes.
Have there been any characters that you didn't like voice acting, either because you didn't like the character or just, anything that you just didn't really like, don't look back on?
Not really. I've really loved just getting to do what I've had the chance to do. I've really enjoyed it. It wasn't anything that I consciously pursued. A door opened and I kind of did it thinking it would just be fun. I didn't expect it would lead to anything. Didn't expect it would go anywhere. And, that was 20 years ago. And suddenly it's 20 years later and hundreds of productions and a lot of wonderful opportunities and a lot of great friends that I've met over the years. I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful and blessed. And there are certainly some characters I liked more than others, but I've been grateful for the opportunity to do anything.
So no, that guy was a scumbag, and I'm glad this is over.
Well, I did play a lot of scumbag.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But it wasn't. But I mean, when it's over, that means I don't have any more work. You know what I mean? So I want this scumbag to live forever, because as long as he's around, I get to play it. You know what I mean?
You did voice a few villains.
Oh, I voiced. Oh yes.
Like in Innocent Venus and like the teacher from Dream Eater Mary and stuff.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I hated him.
That's actually what I was thinking about.
It's an anime that he was in called Dream Eater Mary, where he voiced like who was supposed to be a nice teacher, but it turned out he was a despicable scumbag who enjoyed beating his students for their dreams.
I don't even remember that. Well, you're making my point. He was a scumbag. I played this other scumbag. I played lots of scumbags, actually. I played this veterinarian in some, what was that? Was it Hell Girl? Was that
Oh,
veterinarian who would like,
yes, I know what you're talking about.
yeah, he was like throw these animals in trash cans.
Yes, yes.
I don't know. He was a bad guy.
Oh
Yeah.
god.
And then I played this
Hell
like
Girl.
crazy, like crime boss guy, and his cover was a barber shop, and he was a barber. Like people would come in and like he would slit their throats, and I mean like cut their noses off and stuff.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And think another villain role that you were describing was as Mendoza in
Oh, yeah.
animation. He was like a horrible human being. Like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
like he killed like the protagonist's mom, like just because like he thinks she's a witch or something like that.
Yes.
And he thinks like he's a god or something like that. He had a god complex and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. You're making my point. You know them all.
So me and my friends back home really enjoyed you in Persona 3. I thought you
Oh,
did
thanks,
that.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just wondering what like video game that you like thoroughly enjoyed and maybe even played.
Well, don't kill me. I haven't really played anything I've ever done. I just haven't. It's not anything personal. I just not. But I have been in a lot of video games. A lot. I couldn't even name them all.
You were also in Persona 4 as one of the students
Yeah.
of like the blue haired who was in the volleyball team.
Yeah.
Well,
Questions? So, yes.
What about the roles you turned down, man?
Well, the only roles that I've quote unquote turned down were roles or shows that I just didn't feel good about. I didn't, like there was one, what was that show called? Oh my gosh. When They Cry?
Oh my
gosh.
god, that anime is scary.
Yeah. Well, the studio that was dubbing it emailed me and said, we'd like you to audition for this, but we know you may not be, this may not be your thing. And I looked into it and I wrote them back and said, thank you so much, you're right. It's not my thing, no thank you. And I'm fully aware that, when you take those, when you make those decisions, you make those choices, you're risking, ruining that relationship. You're risking coming across like, oh, he won't do that kind of thing. Well, so be it. As you guys may or may not know, my faith is very important to me. It's a very big part of my life, and I just, I don't feel good about participating in some things, and the only thing I can say about that is I have to believe that if my faith is real, and if God is real, and God is who I think He is, then He's going to be pleased with me making the right choice, and He's going to honor that choice, and He's going to give me other opportunities that that don't require me to to do something that I'm not comfortable doing. I don't have all the answers. I've made some bad calls. I've been involved in shows that I like, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have done this. And I didn't know anything about it when I started, so it was one of those things that kind of, shame on me for not really doing any research on it or anything, but it's a difficult road because you want to work, but you also need to be true to your faith and your beliefs and your values, and so that's always a tricky thing. I mean, I get emails from fans all the time asking me how do you navigate this? How do you come up with certain decisions and make certain choices? And it's not easy. And you're gonna screw up. I mean, you're gonna make a bad choice. But, all you can do is the best you can. And that's the kind of thing that each person has to decide for themselves. Like, where do you draw the line? In anything, Where do you draw the line with what you're okay with and not what you're really not okay with? My line may not be where your line is. Your line may be not where his is or hers. Everybody has to make that own decision in their own heart, in their own minds. Question?
What would you say is the biggest difference between voiceover dubbing for video games and voiceover dubbing for anime? Biggest difference between the two of them?
For video games and anime?
Yep.
Well, anime is more chronological. You know, you're actually telling a story. And you start with the introduction of the characters, and you kind of go chronologically to the end of the story. Whereas a video game and an anime series could last for quite a while, depending on how long the show is. Whereas a video game, I mean, they might bring you in for a day or a week at the most, and you're done recording your character for the video game. And in a video game, you've got possible different scenarios based on the choices you make, right? So when you will record a character dying, and then you'll record him surviving this thing, and then move on to this thing, and maybe you get killed here, maybe you don't. So you have to record all these different possibilities. You're kind of jumping all over, and video games require a fair amount more the in-game fighting, battling sounds. There are little cutscenes, you know, and there are moments where you can actually do dialogue and have some semblance of acting a character, but a lot of it is playing the game and all of the that kind of stuff, you know, that you have to record a lot of. Those are the main differences. Question?
Well, and speaking of that, would you say that doing video game dialogue is more vocally stressful than animation in general?
Well, it depends on the animation, and it depends on the on the video game. You know, a video game like Dragon Ball, pretty much everybody knows it's fighting. Pretty much, oh, Dragon Ball, that's 98% yelling. You know, 2% character, 98% yelling, fighting, powering up. So you basically know what you're getting into. There's some anime where you never even have to raise your voice. I mean, I've played some characters where they were pretty even-keeled throughout and didn't yell and scream and fight, you know? And that was wonderful. I could do that all day long. But there are some, obviously, that are a lot more action-oriented. And then there are video games where I played characters that didn't have a lot of fighting sounds, which was nice. But there are plenty of video games that are mostly fighting in-game battling sounds with only a few lines of actual character, you know, exposition in between. I'm not meaning to be rude, but a friend of mine has got a small window to find something out, and a friend's heading to a Super Bowl thing, so I have to make sure I catch him while he's still
Well, that's understandable. Friends and family.
And like lament that the Steelers aren't in there.
What?
And just lament that the Steelers aren't there.
Yeah, well.
It happens.
Did you just say the Patriots?
Ugh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Are there
Yeah, I think we've seen enough of the Patriots for a decade.
Are they,
Bad, I don't even know who's playing.
Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers.
I'm like, why is the grocery store so full?
Any other questions?
Was there maybe a character or a director that after looking at it after the fact, you feel like the voice could have been done better?
Yes. I'm not going to tell you which ones, because then I would be outing the directors of that show. But I will tell you this, there was a time, both at ADV and Funimation, where they were growing so fast that they needed people in certain jobs, like they needed more directors. And they would hire people to direct who really didn't know what they were doing. They weren't actors. They, you know what I mean? They hadn't really done anything like this. So they didn't have a great deal of experience to base what they were doing. And I think the product probably suffered a little bit because of it. Now, having said that, if a bad director casts good actors, then most of the time the director can just sit back and let the actors do what they do. You know what I mean? Like if you've got actors who are good at doing what they do and they can bring some cool stuff to the table, then the most important job you have is casting the right people in the first place and then letting them do a good job. But I certainly have worked with directors that don't really have a good handle on what they're doing, and I think the product suffers because of that. There was a guy he worked at an ad agency, and they hired him to direct anime series. And I remember thinking, what in the world is his qualification for this? I don't really know actually what his qualifications were.
Do you know which anime he was directing?
Of course I do. Next question? I'll bet you do. Question? Anybody?
I had something, I immediately forgot it. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just want, mine's not really a question, but like, Auron was my first anime I ever watched, and I watched it with my best friend, and so like, looking back, I was like, who's my favorite character?
Oh, yay!
and then I watched Brotherhood, and I watched it like, way too many times.
Oh, there's no such thing.
And so I just think that's really cool that like, I'm not gonna be the same person, so.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. My favorite thing is knowing that something, that I've done has moved someone or helped somebody through a difficult time, or made them laugh when they felt like crying, or got them through a depressing chapter in their lives, or bonded them with a brother or sister, or any number of things that make the work so much more impactful than you think it's going to be. I've been reading a book, sorry. I've been reading a book about making the original series of Star Trek. When those guys made that show, it was just a day job. They didn't expect it was ever going to go anywhere. It was on for a few years, made a couple of bucks, you know what I mean? It was a cheesy little TV show that nobody that was a part of it ever imagined that it would have the worldwide 5-decade, 6-decade impact that it has had. But now, you know what I mean? you go meet, Bill Shatner, or or Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura, or Chekhov, or any of those actors that are still alive. They can't believe that this crazy little show they did 60 years ago, that was low, like kind of cheapo budget, and they were hired as a day actor. Like literally, they were nobody, and they were hired, and they would have never imagined in a billion years that 60 years later, they would be an icon in pop culture and still be doing event appearances. It's like these guys you see at conventions that for years they're signing autographs, and literally their claim to fame is, I was Stormtrooper number 5 standing behind Vader's left shoulder. That's not a thing. That could have been anybody. But you know what I mean? But you would have never imagined that would ever make any difference to anybody, And with me, when I started doing voice acting, I didn't imagine that it would ever have any deeper impact on anybody. I don't know why I didn't think that, because Star Trek certainly did to me. So it's very gratifying and humbling to meet you guys and to interact with people around the world, whether they be here or Australia, or Idaho, or Denmark, or New Zealand, or Maine, or UK, or whatever, to meet people who were at some point in their lives and they latched on to this character or this show, whatever it was, to help encourage them and keep their spirits up a little bit during a difficult time. That's priceless to me to know that I had any part in that.
I want to say that Edward Elric meant a lot to me because when I was a teen, my mother had a long illness, which she died from. And when I saw that anime and saw what he went through, would I have tried what he had done, knowing what happened? Yes.
Yeah.
And for him to go through to help I have 5 brothers, and they all would have been there. And so I had to, not only did I have to follow the original Brotherhood, I bought all the books, the stories,
Yeah.
like, and your voice acting, how you, with his mom, and it was like an echo chamber. It meant so much to me during that time.
I'm so honored.
And so many people are like, you're almost an adult, you'll be fine without her. And it's, if anyone has a close relationship with your mother, when you're 98, you want to call them, so, I know.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, and it means so much to me to know that it meant so much to you. Thank you for that. Thank you. I don't take that lightly. I want you to know
It's
that.
hard for me to talk about that. I just want to say how much your performance and the character meant so much to me during
Thank you.
the whole
Thank you. Well, when I fell in love with the show, and the character, I wanted to give it my best. I wanted it to be the best it could be. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story about my desire for things to be the best they can be in my voice acting career. I was told more than once by people that I would hear little rumblings, and they're just rumors, Has that ever happened to you, where you overhear somebody saying something, or somebody comes and tells you they heard somebody saying something about you, just kind of rumblings, and you can't really quite pinpoint who said what were they talking about, why did they say that, what did they mean when they said that? And I have heard for years that there are some directors who think I'm difficult to work with. Well, I must tell you, as God is my witness, I can't imagine what they're talking about. I don't argue with directors. I'm not late. I don't go over my time. I'm actually pretty fast. I get things done faster than I'm scheduled to. I'm versatile. I joke and try to have a good time. I do anything the director asks. So you may ask, well, why would they say you're difficult? I asked that question, and this was the answer I got. One thing. This is the only answer I got. Some directors don't like it when you give a performance of a line and they think it's fine, and you ask them if you can do it again. What? That's called being a professional. That's called wanting it to be the best it can be. If you, as a creative, have an idea, let's say you have 3 ideas for a way to say a particular line. Well, you want the director to hear all 3 and let him decide which one's the best. So if I do, let's use atomic example, If the line is, welcome, poor men, to our world of beauty, right? Remember he said that?
Yeah.
Well, there may be, welcome, poor man, to our world of beauty. Like, make it kind of singy, like he's lyrical, Or, welcome, poor man, to our world of beauty. You hear the different inflections and pitches? Welcome, poor man, to our world of beauty. Okay, there are 3 different ways to do the same line. Now, one of them may be better than the others, but I want I want the director to have his choice. So occasionally I'll do a line and it'll fit the mouth movements, and the director will be like, fine, let's move on. And I will say, occasionally, not always, I'll be like, oh, can I try another one? Let me give you another idea. 90% of the directors out there that have, that really care about the quality of the product will go, sure, man, let me hear it. Because they want it to be the best too. Once you commit it to the recording, guess what? 100 years from now, it's going to sound just like that. The decision you made right now with what take you were going to put in will forever be that take. So you should probably make dang sure it's a good one, or the best one it can be, right? And that's always been my feeling about things. While most directors appreciate actors that want things to be their best, some of them not so much. Some of them like, hey, you know what? Let's just get her done. If it matches the mouth flaps, we're moving on. Well, you know what? There's more to it than that. And if you think that's all there is to it, you probably shouldn't be directing. Sorry. And maybe that's, why, like I said, difficult to work with. Oh, you mean because I care? Because I care about, about the quality of the work. Very few people have that problem, but there are a couple that do, and that was what they told me the problem is. Hey, it happens, it happens. But you know what? I am incredibly grateful. My time is up, but I'm incredibly grateful for all of your support and your kindness. I'm so grateful for the enthusiasm that you've had over the years for my work. I hope I get to do more in the future. If I don't, I've done plenty already. And regardless, I want you guys to know that regardless of anything in the past, I am incredibly grateful for the opportunities that I've had. Incredibly blessed to have had the chance to do what I've done, to meet so many wonderful people. And I will look forward to seeing you guys again. I'm going to be back in Savannah in June, so please come and say hello. Come and see me, and in the meantime, I wish you all a very, very blessed 2020. God bless you guys, and thanks for hanging out with me. Take care.